afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining me today on our Small Talk Tuesday today, caring for everyday objects. I do want to start this presentation with the land acknowledgement. The Transcona Museum would like to acknowledge that we reside on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm still getting my setup done here, so bear with me for just one moment. There we go. Okay, so I hope everyone can hear me and the audio is coming through okay. So today's talk is all going to be about caring for your everyday objects, the everyday objects that are special and important to you, and just the little things that you can do to help preserve them and to ensure that they will remain with you and your family for potentially generations. So before I get started on the different elements and things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about some of the supplies that you may need or want or are good to have. The first one is a vacuum. Now at the museum we have this lovely Ghostbuster looking vacuum that I can wear, but a vacuum is important to have. With the vacuum here you can see that I have a screen that I've put on it and it's just being held in place with a rubber band. This is to stop little small pieces from being vacuumed up. That's important if you're even cleaning up behind a dresser and small things may have fallen, but also if you're cleaning a textile or something and you don't want to accidentally suck it up in, this will stop that, but also little pieces. I have just held in place with a rubber band, but tape also works really, really well because the screen here is a little sharp, so if you wanted to tape that down so there's no sharp edges. Another thing that works really well for a screen is actually pantyhose. Pantyhose works really, really well. So a vacuum, a good tool to have. Most people have one. If you have one that has variable speeds, even better. Unfortunately, ours just has a little ability to adjust the suction through this way. Other tools that might come in handy, a pencil, Coroplast. You can use Coroplast to make your own boxes or to build supports for items. I have acid-free paper, archival mat board, Mylar, and Mylar photo sleeves. You can get your hands on those, and just like a cleaning cloth too as well. So all these things can help you preserve your own everyday objects. So I have a number of different kinds of objects I'm going to talk about today. The first one, let me just move some of my stuff out of the way, is books. Oh right, before I even get into that, another thing that is sort of like a general care for sort of all objects is you want to have a stable temperature and humidity for your objects. You don't want peaks and valleys as best as you can. I mean, the museum here, we have peaks and valleys, but we try to control that as much as possible using dehumidifiers and humidifiers. So stable temperature and humidity. It's not ideal to store things in the attic or in the basement. Basements tend to get wet, or the first place flooding will happen, and attics tend to be really hot and have a lot of humidity as well. Another thing you want to do is avoid as much light. If you're trying to preserve something, as much light as possible. Most items, light can cause damage, and light damage is irreversible, and you can't bring something back if it's suffered from light damage. So that's like photographs and documents, but also clothing and textiles, furniture. You can get the sun bleaching different spots in furniture, clothing, something like that. So light damage is irreversible and cumulative, which means it just builds over time. So light, if you can avoid as much light as possible, but again, we want to have our things out and we want to be able to see them. So everyday use, not in a direct sunlight, in a direct window with direct sunlight, that's So just on a wall that doesn't get direct sunlight is better than being on a wall where it does get direct sunlight. And another thing which will help preserve pretty much all of the types of things I'm going to talk about today is you want to eliminate dust. Dust is bad for essentially 4 reasons. One, it is abrasive. So dust is essentially made up of dirt particles and skin cells, so it can be abrasive and it can scratch your items, which could cause your textiles to degrade faster. It can also cause scratching on soft metals. So you don't want to have an item dusty because for that reason. So that's 1, it's abrasive. 2, it can actually increase the humidity on an object, which means it can promote mold growth, which you don't want to have happen, especially on a textile or on paper, things like that. So that's number 2 reason why dust is bad. 3, it's actually a food source. Again, dust is made up of a lot of skin cells, so pests, it's a food for pests. So if you reduce the amount of dust on your items, you reduce the chances of pests getting in and munching on your items. And 4, dust is just not appealing to look at. So if we keep it clean, it's more appealing to look at, and you're going to preserve it for longer. And during the presentation today, I'm going to be wearing gloves. Not all of the items that I have up here are actually museum items. I did actually bring some of my own items in from at home, but I am going to wear gloves just in case. For those items that aren't museum items, I will be letting you know that they're not museum because I have a demonstration where I'm going to be destroying an item, just to educate you, but rest assured that is not an artifact. But if you don't have gloves at home, that's fine. Just make sure you have really clean hands. Although if you are handling something such as like silver, cloth, like cotton gloves, or even like the nitrile gloves that I have here would be good. Pretty much everything else in your own home, clean hands is good. Here at the museum, I'm just gonna put on gloves. So the first item, or group of items that I'm going to talk about are books. We all have books in our homes, and they range from different ages, from leather-bound books to hard copy books to softcover books, maybe historical ones to newer ones, but there are a few things you can do to help preserve your books. So I just have one here. So if you just have it standing upright on your bookshelf, that's better than tilted. It's putting more stresses on the spine. You also don't want to have a lot of stuff like stacked up on your books. Don't pack them so tightly together that you can't pull out the book from your bookshelf. That is also not ideal. Again, we want to avoid attics, basements, garages where temperature and humidity fluctuate. Also, garages, you're outside, there's additional pests that could get into your items. And you have to watch your books for signs of pests, because there are some that will either eat the leather or eat the pages inside. Also, with a book, try not to crack the spine, opening up and like really cracking it. Again, light, you want to try to reduce the amount of as much light as you can. For cleaning, you can put on your vacuum, so I could put on my Ghostbuster vacuum, and then just using a soft bristle brush, I forgot to mention this in my supplies earlier, my soft bristle brush, and just dust away gently, flicking the dust off of the object, clearing it off. That's one, and if you have your vacuum right there, you can suck it. I'm gonna put my vacuum on. Okay, where is my hose? So it's a little harder to do because, but I've got my hose here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to vacuum. I'm going to push the dust into the vacuum. That way you don't get dust flying all around your room or your space as you're cleaning your books. Books are fairly hardy. A lot of times with older books, and with newer books, the quality of the paper that it's constructed with will also help with its longevity. Cheaper papers tend to break down faster than more expensive, not more expensive, but they may have more acid in them, which causes them to break down, things like that. But what happens if your book you don't have, like this is a book with a good cover, it's in good condition, it can stand on its own quite easily. But what happens if you have a book that a cover's been ripped off? But it's still an important book to use. So I'm actually just going to tilt my camera down. So this is a book that we have here in the museum, and the cover has been ripped off, or don't know what happened to the cover. So what the museum did is we actually built a box to support it. And it's actually just 2 pieces of mat board. So I can lift one and the other. And supporting it on the sides this way, and then we're going to support it on the sides this way. And then there's just some Velcro tabs here to help hold it closed. And now the book is more supported. We're not going to worry about pages ripping off or anything like that. If we have it on a bookshelf, it can now stand up. It's supported in this way. We don't have to worry about extra damage happening. If you have a book that is extremely damaged, you might want to consider speaking with a conservator to have them, they might be able to put a new cover on it and recover it for you, or build the box for you. A lot of plans for boxes you can find online. A lot of times that's where we go to get the plans and measurements and instructions on how to make a box, because I make them and then I forget all the measurements that I need to do. But there's information online. Materials, so this is just archival mat board, which you can get at art supply stores, or we order ours online. There's numerous companies that you can get them online, and you don't have to be a library or a museum or an art gallery to order from a lot of companies. You can just place your own order. So simple ways of caring for your books. Let's see, is there anything else? Okay, now I'm going to move on to something that we all have in our homes, photographs. Now I have another table set up with some of my things, so I'm just going to go get those. So some people will have a lot of their photographs in photograph albums, like this one. This is one that I brought in from home. This is my own personal album. This is not an ideal album, and I'm going to show you why. It's one of those albums that the pages are sticky. Let's see, you can see there. So the page itself has an adhesive, so the photo is stuck to that, and then this the plastic holds it in place. Now with some of these, the adhesive has failed over time, and so your photos are slipping. And some of these, the adhesive is working very, very well, and you can't get your photos out. So here is a photo from when I was at Universal Studios back in 1996. So this is old, but you can see that the photo is really, really stuck here. So you can try on your own to remove your photos from photo albums like this. They can rip though, and it does happen. So to be very careful, if you don't want to chance your photos ripping, I would recommend consulting with a conservator or an archivist who might be able to help you. But I'm going to try to remove this photo from the album and not damage it. So what I have here is I also have a bone folder. Now I've worked up this one corner, so I'm just going to slide the bone folder in and try to make space and separate it from the adhesive that is on the book. Now it's actually lifting pretty easily. I did do a test before I started the talk. But you can see I'm going slowly. I'm trying to do a number of small passes, not one big pass, because then that will likely cause more damage. And there you go. I was able to remove it from the photo album. So these photo albums, the adhesive is going to break down. Remember, adhesive's yellow over time. that could actually cause additional damage to your photograph. I got this one out and there's a tiny bit of residue on the back. And I don't know if you can see this on camera very well, but there's some yellowing along the corners of my photograph as well. So now that I have it removed from the photo album, because these are not archival quality photo albums, how can I store it? What's the best way to now store my photograph? And for this at the museum, we use Mylar folders. I'm just trying to put my glove back on. 1 second. It's awkward. I'm just gonna get a new glove because that one didn't work so well. Trying to put it back on. So this, it actually opens up. It has a small lip here that folds over. So you can just place your photograph in one of these. This folds over and it does hold it in place. Like these, they're not really gonna fall out or anything like that. I did mention earlier that pencil is good. If you wanna write, say who's in the photograph or where the photograph was taken or who it was taken by, do so in pencil on the back of the image, not pen. We had someone donate some photos here to us at the museum, and to be helpful they wrote who was in the photo on the back, but they used pen, and before the pen ink was dry, they laid it on top of, they were just writing the names and putting them in a pile, and the ink actually transferred onto the image side of the photographs, which you know, then I had to, now we have ink on those photographs, which is an idea. So always pencil, write very, very gently, don't press really hard, because then you may actually affect the image side of the picture. So you can go through your photographs and try to remove them from albums such as these. It'll be a bit of work. Storing them in this is you can handle them and you don't have to worry about fingerprints or other dirt transferring on. And then what we do also here at the museum is once we have them in these envelopes, we store them in folders, and then they go into archival photograph boxes, such as this one. So, and if you have a lot, they fill up the box really nicely, and this is archival quality. It's an acid-free folder. We have the Mylar protection, so there's multiple layers of protection for your photographs this way. But many of us nowadays have our photographs, they're digital. They're not hard copies, they're digital born files, which is a little tricky. And most of images that you take with a camera are taken as a JPEG. JPEGs they're a good, you know, everyday quality photograph, but they're not archival quality. Every time you resave a JPEG, JPEG compresses the file to make it a smaller file size. And every time you resave it, you lose some data. And eventually at some point, you're going to go to open up your picture and it's not gonna open. A JPEG is essentially a bunch of ones and zeros, and too much data has been lost and your photograph will be lost. So at the museum, even when we're digitizing images, we digitize to a TIFF file format, and that file format does not compress, and it's a more stable file format, but they are much, much larger in size, so there is a lot of space that they take up on the computer, on the server, on our hard drives. So that is the trade-off. But many people probably have photos, if not stored on discs such as this, digital born, or they've scanned images and then they've stored their digital copies on discs like this. CDs are pretty fragile in a sense, and they have, that you can get different kinds. It's a metal that is actually burned into with a laser, a bunch of ones and zeros to actually produce your digital files. So there are different metals that actually make up different CDs. You can get some that say, you can see there's different colors that, oops, that's the wrong side. Different colors. Some last longer than others, but eventually at some point CDs are likely going to fail. And a lot of people probably, like this one, I wrote music on here, but they put a bunch of photos or they put some music on a CD and then they wrote on it with pen saying what was in it. And this isn't good. It's actually just a very, very thin layer of like the cover or the label area that they give you, and underneath that is actually the metal that is burned into with the laser. So the ink from permanent markers can eat through the top layer and actually get into the metal of your CD and eat through that. So it's best to, if you do have images that you're putting on CDs, that clear ring around, you probably can't see very well, but this clear ring here, this is where you want to write what is on the CD, because there's no metal there. If it eats through the plastic, it's not going to damage your images or music. To store them, these little envelopes or the paper envelopes, they're not ideal storage. This case you'd think would be good, but then a lot of times you open it and the CD falls out. These are not archival also, by the way. None of these are. So the best storage for a CD is a harder case that holds it more securely. And then you want to actually store these flat like this. But CDs, like I said, are very fragile and they can be damaged easily. And I'm just going to show you just how easily these will be damaged. Now hopefully this actually works on camera and doesn't fail me. So all I did was I applied a piece of tape to the front. This is a Logitech CD that was for Microsoft XP to load a mouse or a camera or something. So it's not an actual archival CD. I brought this in from home, but I just removed all that metal where the information was stored. This CD is useless because all the information is here now. So if you've ever applied a label to your CD and you go to remove it, that could actually remove the data from your CD, and then that CD can no longer be used. So you want to be very careful with your CDs. And in the archival world, we have multiple backups. So we might store some images on CD, but we also have, essentially you want 3 backups in different file formats. So you might have it on a CD, you might have it on the hard drive of your computer, you might have some up in the cloud, and you might actually have the physical hard copy too if it's not a digital born file. But CDs are not necessarily the best form of storage for your images, for your music, things like that. You want multiple different kinds because over time, I used a piece of tape, but at some point the metal is just going to lift off of this, and I've seen that actually happen, where the metal has actually lifted right off of the CD. Did I have, I think that was all I had for images, CDs. So yes, if you have a lot of images, oh right, one more thing about CDs. Have you ever stuck a CD that has a lot of images in it into your computer and your computer can't actually read the CD? As CDs get older and technology advances, there does come a time potentially when your CD drive may not read your CD. That's happened here at the museum with some of our archival ones. And if that happens, try to use different CD drives, different computers. I actually found one where the CD drive still worked. So I was able to make copies of all those CDs using that CD drive. So that's important to note that even though you have it on a CD, the computer technology itself may advance to the point where you can't even open your CD and view your photos. And I, back in the 2000s, got some photos printed, and at the time, I think I could pay a little extra and they would put copies of the images on a CD for me. And I tried not too long ago to put that CD in my computer and it couldn't read it. So those images are now lost on that CD. I can't access them at the moment. Okay, that's photographs and images. The next thing I'm going to talk about are documents. Just bringing back my supplies. So with documents, again, you want to have clean hands when you're handling with documents. So again, it also depends on the paper. There are some inherent vices or things that are just going to happen to a lot of items that we have, such as photographs and paper documents. If you have a lot of newspapers were not designed to be used for more than a day, and then they were to be disposed of. So newspapers were made with very cheap, high acidic paper, so that breaks down, and it's not going to be preserved forever without substantial work happening. So, you know, the type of paper depends on how long a document may last. The type of ink used, there's some historical inks that are very acidic and they actually just eat right through the paper. If anyone has ever put tape to fix the document, we all know that tape yellows and brittles over time, and that may cause damage to your document in the long run, so you might want to have that removed, but removing it may cause even more damage. Again, there's times when you should consult with a conservator. Staples and paper clips, you want to remove those if you're storing your items, because the paper clips and staples can actually rust on the document itself, or cause indentations in the paper, which could make that area more fragile and more prone to damage. And then if your images or your documents are rolled, that's putting extra stresses on that. Rolled documents can be unrolled, but it usually involves a treatment with humidity and a flat table, and or documents in weights. Sun exposure, again, that's going to embrittle your paper. So this is not a historical document, but I made one for the demonstration purposes for this. So this, there's a paper clip, so if you have paper clips, remove them. If you have a number of documents, you know, we just store them in acid-free folders again, like this, and again in our photograph or textual box, depending on the size of your documents. If you have a number of items that are going into one folder, but they don't all go together, you could write in pencil one of one, like one of two, two of two for the different documents. Sometimes that's helpful with letters because there might be multiple pages if they aren't already numbered by the person who is writing the letter. But again, we're going to just store the document. This is providing extra protection. If someone is going to reach for it, they're not directly reaching for the paper and potentially ripping it. This is a sturdy folder. It's acid-free, so any acids that are in the paper would actually go into the folder. It's just an extra layer of protection, and then stored in a box again. And if your box isn't full, you can actually fill it with other items to, like acid-free tissue, just to make sure that your folders aren't tilting, that they're secure. But a lot of these here at the museum, you know, we felt our boxes are pretty much full. Again, with everything, we want to avoid direct sunlight. We want to avoid drastic temperatures and changes in temperature and humidity. If you have oversized items, to actually store them flat if possible. You can buy oversized acid-free boxes. You can make your own. I have an example later on of an oversized box that I actually made for a textile object, but you can do the same for large oversized photographs, or maps are another thing. You know, oversized, storing it flat gives it, you want to have things stored in their most stable position, and for something that is large and oversized, laying it flat is its most stable position. And then with your documents, if you want to have any out on display, but again with photographs, to really think about, does the, like you can put out originals, but they will fade over time, or possibly look at making a replica and having that out on display. So if that fades or is damaged to UV light or something like that, you still have the original. You still have the ability to make another one, put that out, and you still have the original. Pretty much all of the images that we ever put on display here at the museum, they are all replicas. We don't put originals out just due to the fading and exposure to additional light and UV. A lot of time that's for our photographs. A lot of our photographs are actually quite small, so we put out a replica, but we also enlarge it so you can see more details on the image, and so you can see it better from further distances without having to hold the tiny photograph with you. The next items that I'm going to talk about are textiles. So I just need to clean off my table here while I get that ready. So textiles, so we call it textiles in the museum world. That could be anything ranging from clothing to tablecloths to pretty much anything made of fabric, quilts, blankets, etc. If you have clothing that you want to preserve and store, there's a number of different ways that you can do it. You can hang it, you can box it up, and you know, those are sort of like the two. And for quilts and large oversized things, actually rolled storage is good for those as well. So if you're hanging, this is a wire hanger. We don't want wire hangers. They're not good. They're going to put extra, they're not going to support the clothing well, and it's going to pull at the shoulders or however it's placed on the hanger and damage it. You can get wooden hangers. Wooden hangers are better, but they're not the best. A padded hanger is actually what we're looking for if you're going to hang textiles. Now this is a wooden hanger that was then wrapped with batting and then a cover sewn all around it like this. This is one option. Another option is to actually cut up pool noodles and place them on your hanger to provide that extra support at the shoulders. Because where there's extra stresses, that will cause the fabric to weaken there, and then you might potentially have a loss with a hole or with a rip, something like that. So you can hang up your textiles. You can also put them in a box. So I have a box here of an item that I actually built this box for this item. It's custom. Just gonna move my camera down again. Let's see. Okay, so maybe move my table a little bit more. Okay, that's better. So this is actually like a beaded jacket. This is a museum artifact. So this was a box. It's a box and a lid. So I made this using archival mat board, just cut and to size, and then taped together with linen gum tape. So when you have textiles in a box, oftentimes you have to fold them or you have to position them to get them to fit in the box. If you're going to do that, it's good to pad any folds with acid-free tissue, and that is going to allow to not put any stresses on any folds. So this item here, I did actually pad the few folds that are in here. So this is a beautifully beaded jacket, and it used to be in a box that was much larger than this, and anytime we picked it up, it shifted over and it moved, and I didn't want that to happen anymore. So I actually built supports in this box for the shape of the jacket. So when it's placed in here, it sits stable. It's not going to move around. And here you can see that I did pad any folds or creases. So this up here is padded, and the neck is also padded. And I used foam, archival quality foam, to build the supports, and then I just covered it with acid-free paper. And now when I pick this up, it doesn't move around, and it used to just slide to one end of the box and slide to the other end of the box. So you can box up your textiles. So this was a custom box. I measured out how long it needed to be, how wide it needed to be, and I constructed it myself. You can purchase boxes online and through archival supplies and like Karma Klein or another company is called Gaylord. You can purchase them, but you can also make them yourself if you have the acid-free or the archival mat board. So I've got it nice and stable in here. I've got it padded to support this, so we're not going to have any damages at the shoulders or through movement. Over time, some of the beads did actually fall off, so they are bagged and stored in here as well. And then as another way of not having it moved, when it's boxed up, I just placed extra acid-free tissue over it so it can't shift within itself. Just extra support. So this can be done with all different types of textiles. Like even when you're packing and you're going somewhere, if you're folding up your clothing and you don't want it to be wrinkled when you get there, if you pad your folds with tissue paper, they won't come out of your suitcase wrinkled. You do want to use acid-free tissue. You don't want to use any sort of colored tissue paper that, if it got wet, would leach color onto your clothing, and that would not be good. But this is a great alternative because this jacket could not be hung up. It would not be supported on a hanger. So storing it flat in a box is better for it. And the old saying, measure twice, cut once, is very true, because I had to make this box lid twice because I didn't measure it properly the first time. Oops. One of the next items I'm going to talk about, and I'm just going to bring it up a little closer again and move my camera up. So the next section of things I'm going to talk about is metals. There's many different kinds of metals that you might have in your house. Iron, silver, brass. Brass is huge and back right now, so that's something that you might have in your collection at home. So I'm going to start with silver because I have some examples of silver. This is actually silver from my own collection. It was passed down to me from my mom, and it had belonged to my uncle. And unfortunately with silver, this is electroplated silver, and you can tell if your silver is 925 or solid silver or plated silver. This is plated silver, and I can see on the bottom, I don't know if that's going to translate on the camera, but there's some markings on the bottom here, and it says LP brass, so that means it's electroplated brass. So what that means is the very, very thin layer of silver over top of the brass. So unfortunately with these ones, let's see if it shows this yellow area here. These have been over polished to the point where the silver has been polished directly off of the cup. So unfortunately there are losses of silver on this that, unless I took it to a silversmith and had it replated, are gone. So really think about your silver. This can happen very easily. Silver is very soft. Silver is one of those metals that could scratch if it's too dusty and you rub really hard on it, it could scratch. So to really think about, does your silver actually need to be cleaned? Because the corrosion products, or when your silver turns the different colors to black, that's actually not bad for the silver. It's not damaging to your silver. It's a chemical process that's happened and your silver is perfectly fine. It's through the removal of that you can actually cause damage, which you can take off the silver, you can scratch down into the base layer, and then if humidity gets in, it can cause different types of degradation that are also irreversible. So really think about it, does your silver need to be cleaned? If you want your silver cleaned, there are different methods of doing it. How we do it here at the museum is we actually use precipitated chalk or powdered chalk in distilled water, and we gently rub, because chalk is not going to scratch, and it will remove the corrosion products. And then if you have it stored in a cabinet because you want to view your silver, because silver is very beautiful, you can think about lining your cabinet with a product called Pacific Silver Cloth, and it actually absorbs the pollutants, because why your silver changes colors is due to pollutants in the air. So the Pacific Silver Cloth will actually absorb those pollutants and keep your silver, the shiny silver, longer. Another thing to do is don't use Windex or any ammonia-based products if you're cleaning the glass on your display case where you have your silver, because those pollutants are going to react with your silver and they're going to cause the tarnishing even faster. Now, if you have iron objects in your collection, the rust corrosion products on those are the opposite of this. They're actually bad for your objects. It's actually turning the metal from your iron objects into rust, and once it's sloughed off, it's gone forever. You can't put that iron back on. So to keep those away from high humidity levels so that you don't have those corrosion products, sometimes you might, if it's clean, like painted, ensuring that there aren't any chips or anything like that where moisture can get in. Other times, iron objects in museum world, they might actually be waxed to prevent moisture from coming in to cause those corrosion products. So how you treat your metal objects is different. Usually iron objects, they're potentially more industrial, used more often, whereas things like silver and brass are, I don't want to say daintier, but they're not used for those hard everyday uses like an iron tool would be. So we have that. So basically, try not to over clean. Be wary of fingerprints actually on your metal objects because we have oils in our fingers. Remember I said earlier we want to have clean hands. With metals, we do want to wear gloves if possible, because the oils in our hands can actually etch into the metal on your silver specifically, but then have fingerprints there that are etched in, that are forever there. So you don't want to over clean. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about, it's another media, but VHS tapes. Many people out there may not know what these are, whereas other people's, home movies are on these special memories and everything. So there's ways you can store this and keep this so that your memories can be preserved. Now, it would be a good idea to have a copy made, like a digital copy made from your VHS tape, because the magnetic tape inside does break down and you could lose the information that's on that tape. But there are things you can do to preserve it while you're waiting to be able to digitize it. And the old movie rental places, Be Kind Rewind does not exist for this. The most stable way to store these, like the information on the tape, is to actually play it all the way to the end. Play it till it's stopped and store it that way. Then the tension on the tape is at the most appropriate tension. If you rewind it, the tension can be too high and that can cause snapping and damage. So you only want to rewind when you're actually going to watch a tape or listen to like a cassette tape. Otherwise you play to the end and you store it that way. These two should be stored in those hard plastic clam box type boxes for these. We don't have a lot of VHS in our collection. This is actually an empty one that was never used. So there's nothing on it. But you want to have it stored in a hard container. That way it's eliminating any pests or dust from coming in. And also you can store it this way. Actually, I can't remember I believe it is to be stored this way, not like this. Oh yeah, if you store it this way, the tape along the spools can slip down, and you don't want to have that to happen. So you're going to want to store it up and down vertically like this. Now, if any of the different things like photographs or tapes or cassette, anytime you digitize, if you're thinking about digitizing, don't get rid of the originals. Like I said before, it could happen where your CD is damaged, your computer hard drive goes, and then all your images are lost. So it's good to keep the originals. I know they take up more room. That's me coming from a museum perspective, where you can always make another copy if you have the original. If you don't, then unfortunately it's lost. So I'm going to ask if anyone watching has any questions. I've come to the end of my short little small talk here today, just how to care for your everyday objects. If anyone has any questions, please leave them in the chat and I can answer them as best as I can. If you have any questions, if you're watching this after the fact on Instagram TV or on our YouTube channel, just leave them in the comments and we'll do our best to get back to you. Or you can always just shoot us an email and we'll do our best to answer you. So I'll just wait a minute, see if there's any questions. But if not, thank you so much for joining us today. Our Small Talk series is running all summer. There's a couple of weeks where we don't have one going on. The week after the August-Long, the week of the August-Long weekend, we don't have a Small Talk that week. And the next week, I can't remember. It's on our website, I'm sorry. But we've got a number planned. Next week's talk is going to be all about the 5 objects that are representative of our museum collection, the 5 that I feel are representative of our collection, and the 5 that the assistant curator, Jennifer, feels are representative of the collection. Because I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Alana, and I'm the curator here at the Transcona Museum. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And if there's no questions, hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye.